2026, episode 2.
It's key that your people aren't overwhelmed or overloaded at any particular point.
Really try and get them to be honest with you and say, what are you capable of and what are you not, and where do you need our assistance?
Part of our role is to try and identify those.
For me, it's the care that you give to the people as much as you do your own delivery and the program as a whole. You know, actually, we need to do it together with them.
All the best, most successful projects work in that way.
Welcome back, Steve.
Great to be back.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Really looking forward to today's discussion.
Going to be good.
Something close to my heart, and that is resourcing. Now, straight off the bat, that might not sound overly exciting to some people, but in reality, it's such a critical area, especially for any digital transformation program, specifically integrations, data migrations, those sorts of things. And I think today we want to talk about more around actually the client resourcing and where we need supporting resource on these specific programs, and that classic challenge of, individuals taking their time out of their BAU process to support on these delivery projects, and how we can, we'll try and talk about some of the things that we recommend you can do to really get that balance right, because that's what it is. It's a bit of a juggling act, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to note that, as a consultancy, we provide people who are fully focused on the project, and that's their sole role within the project. It's just doing that. But with our clients, their people are, generally key people that have got the knowledge and the expertise, and they're required to help on the project, but they've got to do their BAU as well. Now, sometimes in sort of luxury times, you do get sort of, people seconded full-time to the project, and that's great, and they're backfilled, but that isn't always the case, and quite rare, I would say, in our experience.
Yeah, I mean, they're the heroes, aren't they?
Yeah.
Great people, but you feel sorry for them in a way, because it's that classic thing of, they put their best foot forward, they put their hand up, they work hard, and then everybody wants them. It's like, oh yeah, that person's coming to the front. Let's take them for our need. So, again, it's so important that we identify these resources early, that we understand they're going to be wearing multiple hats, and really trying to segregate their weeks, so that, just to help them really. But I think, you talked there about the fact that, they have these BAU responsibilities. So, a bit like we talked about timing previously as part of retail and how important that is. But from a resourcing point of view, to understand when are those critical sort of periods during the month or during the quarter that those resources are going to be priority BAU. Unfortunately, yes, we're all priority program delivery, but they will have differing priorities. So, I think it's really important to make sure that we understand those, they're referenced on the plan. There will be times when those resources, almost have to be left alone. So you have to plan around that, otherwise people get too stretched, and then they don't, they get nervous, and they don't, they're not happy. They don't deliver as efficiently as they could do.
Exactly. No, it's key that your people aren't overwhelmed or overloaded at any particular points, but in general as well. I mean, you made a good point in there about sort of certain times of the calendar, like you might have finance teams that are always going to be busy at month end or quarter end, even worse. But we've got to sort of think about the actual project as well. The project's going to have key times where people are needed. So the sort of activities that we're talking about, you might have your sort of SMEs, your key people might be involved in the as is to be sort of processes and thinking about those, but then they get involved in testing, then they get involved in training. From a data migration point of view, we want them involved in reconciliation. For integrations, we might want them involved in testing of those as well. So we're going to need help at certain points in time, and part of our role is to try and identify those and be upfront with those as soon as possible, as early as possible, saying this is when we need people, for what reason and for how long we're going to need them for.
Absolutely. And you're now starting to touch on to the bit I wanted to talk about, which for me is critical. We talk about it all the time, and it's that hand holding. For me, it's the care that you give to the people as much as you do your own delivery and the program as a whole. And I think it's so frustrating that even in, today's world, we still see, certain consultancies getting that wrong. Just sort of, oh, there's a task here that we need you to do, throw it at the fence, you better get that done. And if you don't, it's going to cause a blocker or an issue to our delivery. And that is wrong. It is within our duty to make sure that we hold the hand. So what does that mean? That means that at the start of the program, as you said, we're very clear on what we anticipate your responsibilities to be, and then highlight and speak with them to really try and get them to be honest with you and say, what are you capable of and what are you not, and where do you need our assistance? Because you take integrations or data migrations, for example, that it's our bread and butter. We live that every day, and we're used to all the words, we're used to all the ways of working. But sometimes I think it's very easy to forget that the people that we need to work with, that we need them to work with us for us to be successful, they don't know this. So you almost have to take a step back, don't you? That classic saying is, treat someone as if they were a 4-year-old or whatever. I think it's so important. Of course, you don't want to come across, a bit pedantic and
No,
and all the rest of it,
patronising
but
and all that. Yeah.
exactly, and be patronizing. But you have to build those relationships early on. That is so key for the success as we go forward, but also remembering to keep doing it. So every month or every point in the plan, just keep going back to those individuals and, is everything okay? Are you comfortable? Are have you got the ability to do your duties, and do you understand it, and are you happy? And I think just sort of identifying those individuals where you can see they're struggling. You can see that they're trying to say yes, but they don't really know. So I think the more you can put, the effort you can put into helping them is gonna make your project more successful, which is the irony, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know.
But no, it's very true, because I mean, we're dealing with people who are experts in their field, and they're brilliant and great people most of the time. They're wonderful, and it's great working with them. But we need to understand that they're not technical people most of the time. They haven't been through a data migration before or integration before. Um, you know, a big ERP implementation. So we have to guide them on that, and we have to guide them in the areas where we need their help. And we will do that with workshops, and we'll actually sort of take them through. We'll have documents that explain things. So it's trying to sort of, you know, make them at their ease, make them feel at ease in doing that work, and just be on hand to help them if they've got any issues or uncertainties around things. But it's just being really clear, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's an onus on the leadership team, right? About making sure that they're fully communicated to, that they're brought into the tent, that there isn't a divide between maybe external consultants that come in versus, the teams are on BU. It's about bringing everyone together, that clear communication so that they feel part of it. Things can help that, things like early visibility of new systems, getting ahead on reconciliation activity and close to the data, so really pushing that, yes, we might not be going live for 12 months, but let's get involved now. Let's get that understanding now, because we see it far too often where some key individuals just come way too late to the party because they know about it, but they will keep prioritizing their BAU because, oh, that's not going live for 12 months. I don't need to know about that now. And I think, no, you do. You don't need to be spending hours and hours a day, but let's start integrating you now so that you understand the world, you understand the direction, and it's helping us help you. It's that famous saying.
Yeah, and it's something that we do as part of our strategy piece, isn't it? That we'll actually do resource planning as part of that. Now, obviously, when you're doing it as a strategy right at the very start of a project that could be running for the next 12, 18 months, things might change over time, but you at least put a baseline resourcing plan in place to say, this is when we need people, this is the activity, this is how long it's going to take them, what percentage of their time that we need. And then at least the client can then go away and say, all right, have we got bottlenecks here? Are certain people overloaded at any one time? How can we sort of sort this out? So it's important to get that in early, get that in place, and it will adapt over time. But at least you've got a starting point, and you can just keep monitoring that.
Yeah, and I think that's there's another word which is backfill. Hear it all the time, don't we? Where we have these key people in the organisation that we need to come onto the program, and they're leaving a gap, right? So we need someone else to come in to fill that gap. So there's two things here. One is, let's make sure that the backfill isn't then the person that comes onto the program, because that's no use, because you're now bringing a person onto the program that doesn't have the subject matter expertise of those current systems, and also they might be new to big digital transformation programs. So backfill always has to be someone covering the BAU, to enable that subject matter expert that's been there for a number of years to then come on to the program. So I think that's, that's really, really important, And then secondly, thinking about that early, actually, because if you are going to bring in, people to take over, a key SME's job, they will need some time to train that person to bring them up to speed so that they're not constantly having to go back and forth in between the two projects. So I think that, the people that are making the calls on this, that are doing the resource planning, have a bit of empathy, have a bit of care
Mm,
about your staff.
definitely.
And there is a cost there. So again, it's very easy to just sort of shirk away from that. But we see it all the time, really key SMEs, I call them heroes because they are, they're overloaded,
Yeah.
it's too much. And it's just not nice. We're all here to enjoy what we do. So, it's really important that we give that extra care early on.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that about the care because, I mean, ERP implementations, new projects, they are sort of they are uncertain times for people, and they are quite stressful. Just if you then add on to that people working ridiculous hours because they're trying to do 2, 3 jobs at once, you're making it even worse. So it's really important to do that sort of resource planning and actually think about you know people doing multiple things at the same time. It's always going to lead to problems.
No, absolutely. And the final thing I want to say on that is again, just remember that yes, I know a lot of organizations, they look to, consultancies like ours, to come in and have that expertise and to help. But we can't do it on our own. I mean, we can try, but for it to be successful, we need to do it collaboratively with their own people. And therefore, uh, put that thought forward. It's not just about, oh, we're going to go and, procure some company and they'll do it all for us. No, actually, we need to do it together with them. And that's where you get the most success.
It's key, isn't it? It's absolutely key that you work collaboratively with the client, with their SMEs. All the best, most successful projects work in that way.
No, absolutely. And hopefully this talk has, sort of helped push that a little bit, and maybe there can be a bit less stress in the
Let's hope
world
so.
of digital transformation that we do. Probably not, but it's you'd always get stressful times, but there's a lot that we can do to help it. And I think that some of those things we talked about will definitely help. So no, fantastic. Thank you, Steve. I'll see you next time.
See you next time.